Hi there, Mark here again, and welcome to part one of my build videos for the Tamiya Super Avante on the brand new TD4 chassis. And this is going to be a little bit different to my normal build videos, the normally build guides. So let's get started and I'll tell you a bit more about how I'm going to do the video. The first thing I recommend you do is have a good read through the build guide before you get started. Go through the whole lot, and I've just done that, and I can tell you that this is a lot more involved than an entry-level Tamiya kit. There are far more components and far more steps, and you really need to go through and have a good read and make sure you know exactly what needs to go where for each step, and obviously get all your parts prepared ready before you start that step. So before we do part one, you need to open parts bag A and put it in a pot, and unusually for a Tamiya kit, all of the screws in this kit are still hex head screws, and you do get a set of Allen keys with the kit, but I highly recommend that you get a set of these hex drivers. They're quite cheap. I've got mine off eBay, a set, so they're quite cheap, and they make the whole job a lot easier than using the small wrenches. So that's the first thing, is recommend getting some of these. So as I said at the start, I'm not going to go and show you me screwing and putting every component together, but I'm just going to show the main larger components, how they fit together and what's really involved in building this kit. Hopefully it will help you guys out there if you're just looking to get an overview of how this thing goes together. So I'm going to do like this. This is step one. You get your chassis, motor plate. Onto that motor plate you cut a piece out of this foam strip. You can see, put a small strip on there. The dimensions are in the diagram. The plate mounts into the chassis there, like that, and it's held in by two 10mm countersunk screws. You can just see there, and the one goes in there, and the next one underneath. And to finish this step, it's just the two 5mm ball connectors. You can see them there, and you put on these kind of foam collars, if you can see those, which you simply pull out of this strip. There's a big strip of those collars there, so they'll go on all of the ball joints in this build. And then straight on to step two, which is the rear gears, where you'll need this bag. It's got shims in it and some pins and bearing, and you need this part here, which is MA30. And also make sure you match up your bearings with the diagram, because they are slightly different sizes and it's quite easy to get them mixed up. So that's the three sets of gears made up. Just give you a quick look at those. There's the second one. And the third. Now we're going to put those into the chassis, which is step three, and you're going to need plastic parts K2 and K17. K17 again, and if you can see, you've got to put this sponge, which is a real faff getting that sponge around there, but that's what you have to do. I think it's to stop dust and debris getting in. So that's that part. And then for your K2, you need to put, there's a countersunk screw that goes through there, and it's held with a nut. It's just a plain nut, so what I've done is I've put a bit of glue, this stuff, just to make sure that doesn't come undone, because I do not want this screw falling down into the gearbox. That's the last thing we want. So let's get the gears in. Yep, they all sit nicely in place, so I must have made them up correctly, else they wouldn't be fitting in the slots and all gearing up together like that. So I'm just going to get some grease on those and get these covers in place. Might be a bit difficult to see, but you can see this kind of half circle there. That's got to fit in to the motor plate, or underneath the bottom of the motor plate, so you've got to force that in kind of sideways, like so. And then K17 goes over the spur, like that. Okay, so I've just screwed these covers on, and I've also gone ahead to step 4 and attached all these plastic parts and the ball joints, as you can see. And just checking by turning this shaft here, all turns smoothly, and you can see the spur gear going round, that all nice and freely, so that's okay. But and just a quick word of warning, I've just been tightening up all these hex screws, and I've got to say, you do not need to go crazy over tightening these. It doesn't take very much pressure at all, or much tension I should say, or torque, and these screws start spinning, so obviously that starts pulling plastic out of the chassis itself. So go really careful and don't go too crazy over tightening these things. Just a little nip up is all it needs. So yeah, I've got the this mount on the back. I think these are the wing mounts. This is the rear shock stay, as I said, with the ball joints, and then you've got the two, I think they're body posts, one on each side there. So that's the end of step 4. So step 5 is attaching the motor, which I have done, and I've gone for this e-tronic sport tune modified motor. It's 17 turn. This was a present from Rob Brennan. Thanks, Rob. So I think it might be quite suited to this buggy. We'll soon find out anyway. So here it is in place. It's just a case of these 2 silver cap screws, hold it in with some washers behind there, and then you've got these slots in the motor plate, so you've got to push the motor towards the spur gear to get it to mate up, and just make sure that you don't push it in too tight or obviously leave it too loose. You can just turn the shaft here, and you might be able to see there's a little bit of movement there, so I think that meshes about right, and if you give it a spin you shouldn't feel any real resistance on those gears. So that's nice and easy to fix in. And the only other real part of this step is making up these tie rods. So I've made up that one there. Again, you just put the end adjusters onto the turnbuckle shaft and match it up. And just a little tip, if you hold the shaft with a decent set of pliers so it won't spin round, once you get the one end started, get yourself a 7mm X drive or 7mm socket like this. It should just fit over like that, and it makes it a whole lot easier to get that threaded on, I tell you. So saves your fingers, that does. There's another little tip for you. I'll just get that screwed in to the right length, and on step 6, which is going to be the differential gear. Oh, so just make sure when you pop these tie rods onto those 2 ball joints, just make sure that you've got that knurled end of the bar of the turnbuckle both pointing to the same way, so both pointing to the left. Okay, so I've made a start on the differential gear. Make sure you get these the right way around, so you've got the diff joint at the top with the pin pointing out, it points down, and there's the recess in the bottom one. Yeah, so that's quite easy. Just drop the balls in, make sure you put some grease on, put your diff plates on. So that's that. Make sure you keep it the right way up. And also it's a good idea to build these parts up, this one and this small part here, inside a plastic tub or something, because these balls can go flying off and you don't want to be losing your balls. So making up this thrust washer is a tricky little thing. You've got to put your first washer on, you can see there, then you've got to put some grease on, and then these loose tiny little balls, there's 8 of them you've got to put in, and then slide the other washer over the top. Once that's done, now we can insert that from the bottom into MB21, and hopefully now that should hold the balls in place. They won't come out because they're stuck in that kind of tube they're in there. So that goes in there, and then make sure you get some pliers again. Give the spring MB13 a good squash down and release, else it's going to be too stiff, you won't be able to get part A5 on. And then simply pop that down into the top. And now we've got to get the infamous part A5 plastic part, which a lot of people have said doesn't do the job and comes undone or breaks. But anyway, I'm going to try and use it. And then you've got to put that down the top and screw that part we just put in, MB14, up into it. So I'll have a go at that. Yep, seem to have got it started okay, so fingers crossed. Okay, and what you've got to do now is you've got to keep turning that MB14 bit by bit, and then try it every now and then by holding each side of the diff joints. I've got a ruler that side, I've got a Allen key this side, and with them held you shouldn't be able to rotate the centre, so that's just turning slightly. I've got to keep nipping up now till that won't rotate, and that should be the diff done. Right, so that seemed to go okay. So it turns quite freely because it's very smooth. So I put there's the washers and the bearings on. You've got urethane bushes that go into each side, 2 of each, and that's ready to go in on step 7 into the chassis. And it just pops in there. I've already put on these exhaust type things, I think they are, that go there. And the only other thing here is this part K5. This is a bit of a faff. You can see it shows the instructions here, and you've got to put this foam on there. If I hold it like that, you can see the foam that I've put on, and then you've got some foam there as well. Just follow the instructions, but I've got to say this is a faff to put this one on, because you have to stick it on, then kind of cut round it with a modelling knife. Hey, well, that's done now, so all I've got to do is fit that on there like so with 2 screws, and that's the end of step 7. And step 8 is a simple case of following the instructions for fitting the motor cover, which is part K1, and that's that part here. Step 9 is a piece of cake, nothing tricky to this at all really. It's just preparing the rear arms like so. Just make sure you pop your ball joints in there, and we're going to fit those in step 10. Just make sure you get these the right way around. Again, copy the diagram, and basically that just pops into that hole there. You can see that. Same for the other side, and those are held on by this part K4 like so. And then this is part B4, just goes on there and holds it all in place. So I'll just get all those screws in, and that'll be that bit finished. On step 11 we just make up the rear axles. It's obviously 2 of. They end up looking something like this. Just remember to put that little grub screw in there, as it shows. Nothing really complicated. Your bearing goes in there and you've got your axle just in place. So we're going to fit these in step 12, where we're going to fit one of these on each of the rear arms. You just need one of these pins and the little screw, which by the way is a crosshead screw. It isn't a hex head. Anyway, it's quite simple to fit that. Just get your axle and your pin, just line it up and push the pin in, and that tiny screw just goes into the hole next to where the pin is, like so. And once that's screwed in, it stops the end of the pin coming out, like so. If you can see there. Okay, and just get your drive shaft and pop that in the output cup, the other end in the wheel shaft, and then get your top arm and just pop it on the ball joint like so. I'll just do the other side, and it should look like this when you're finished. So with that, you got the rear suspension pretty much working, obviously without the shocks. So that's the end of step 12 and the end of parts bag B. So as the next step is opening parts bag C, we'll save that for the next part, which will be part 2. Thanks for following along with this one. Hope some of it was helpful for you, and I hope to catch you on part 2. Bye.